This episode of Liquid Assets is sponsored by HASA, the leader in water treatment solutions. HASA delivers eco-friendly, reliable, and cost-effective water care and has been keeping communities safe, one drop at a time. They've been at it for more than 60 years, and you can learn more about HASA by visiting hasa.com. That's HASA, HASA.com.
What's up? My name is Johnny. I am a water quality engineer, and I am the CEO of TapScore, where you can get water quality testing for any purpose at home or at work.
Welcome to Liquid Assets. I'm your host, Ravi Kurani. Liquid Assets is a podcast where we talk about the intersection of business, technology, and management, all as it looks at the world of water. Today, we have an awesome guest for you. We have Johnny Pujol, who's joining us from the West Coast in Berkeley. Johnny, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just great. How are you doing in New York?
I'm doing good. Doing really, really good. It's starting to hit a little bit of springtime, so we got to see the cherry blossom. Central Park is beautiful. It's gorgeous here in the city.
And this is your first spring in New York?
My first spring in New York. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Entirely. I want to jump right into it. We were chatting before I hit record, and I actually get this question asked a ton when people are like, "Hey, you have a water podcast. What's my tap water like? Like, is it better to drink bottled water? Let's just jump into this debate of like, is my tap water safe? Do I need to go to, Walgreens and buy bottled water? What just kind of break that down for us."
Yeah, it's a fun question because there are so many answers and so many situations to begin with. You have, well, let me just say first, it's not unusual for people to wonder if their tap water is safe. Like we sell water testing. So we're familiar with the rural concerns, people living in the kind of middle of a small town. Maybe they've got a small water system. Maybe they have a private well. That's whole bucket of concerns unique to that small town and that well. You then have the big city concerns, like yourself in New York City. New York has famously good water, and it does have famously good water. But people are still concerned, not one because of climate change and changing water supplies and maybe concerns about politics and public trust, but then also more realistically, in my opinion, concerned about the plumbing in the building, plumbing in the house, the appurtenances. And of course, with the new lead and copper rule, there is a lot more discussion now about replacing lead pipes. So even in the big cities, you have a bucket of concern around drinking water. And then you have the world of people who are trying to optimize their health, right? And these are the same folks who might be thinking about buying an alkalizer or worried about alkaline water in that they're consuming.
Yeah.
Bottled water people who swear by Evian or who swear by Smart Water. And then you have the folks who own a home and have invested in a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 water filtration system for the entire house, or a $500 unit under the sink. And they're worried about their own special particular concern. And these 5 or 6 groups that I just mentioned, I'd say will constitute 95% of people coming in and having questions about their drinking water quality. And all of them have a similar question, which is like, is this safe? It's a really hard question to answer without any information. And people try. There's like, okay, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to smell it. I'm going to taste it. And I'm going to use that information.
Sure.
We know that's not a good idea. You can get some clues looking and smelling, and we're highly evolved in certain regards. And so we can, if it smells like poop, it's probably bad for you. We have some indications we can work with. But arsenic, unfortunately, and lead, unfortunately, and a myriad of other contaminants have no taste, odor, or smell. Okay, so that's kind of not going to answer the question, is my tap water safe? The next thing people turn to is typically information from the government, information from the private utility that's serving you or the public utility that's serving you about your water quality. And this is, in my opinion, a very 20th century kind of answer to the question. It's like, oh, someone else is telling me with a piece of paper. There are those days, it's like the newspaper, right? Those days are gone. We don't read the newspaper anymore. We don't necessarily take our mail, open up every single envelope and trust it. So trying to convince people at home that your tap water is safe to drink with a piece of paper, I'm colloquializing what's called a consumer confidence report, which a water utility has to provide the customers every year. Trying to tell people that water is safe with that document, just a little bit anachronistic, a little bit antiquated. Sorry. So again, you still don't have a lot of people happy knowing if their tap water is safe or unsafe. Then the next thing you can do is you can buy a $10, $5, $20 test strip. And you've kind of seen these at Lowe's, and people stick them in their pool. If you're lucky enough to have a pool, you see some basic information about water quality. But test strips are the very, very surface level of diagnostics and testing. There's a reason a laboratory is filled with millions of dollars of equipment. If they could do it with test strips, they would. The test strips don't see low enough concentrations. They don't test most things to begin with. And then you're usually left looking at some shade of orangey, red, green, and determining if you're either going to die or you're perfectly fine. And so they're not super satisfactory. What I'm leading towards is people testing their own tap water. And for a long time, that option has been off the table because many water testing laboratories didn't build their businesses to sell to people at home. They were built to work on, government contracts, large public funded contracts, large airports being built, whole areas of town being constructed, compliance work, regulatory work. And so, they built their businesses accordingly, big contracts. And it really wasn't until recently when things like the internet and e-commerce and localized improved shipping started to converge and to make it possible for people at home to access professional certified environmental testing labs. And so we're probably in, year 5 of a 50-year backlog of a revolution to make environmental testing, water testing, even food testing, all of these health tests that are emerging across our economy. Water and environmental testing is behind all of them. We're late to the game. Testing your exposome, testing the things you have at home, it is new. So drinking water testing is kind of that 4th stage of understanding. Is my water safe to drink? And getting your own hands on sampling equipment and sending it into the laboratory and getting results back, that's the answer. That's what you need to do to really answer the question. And with that information, not only can you say, okay, I see a little bit of lead, a little bit of aluminum, a little bit of zinc, some high THMs, these trihalomethanes that are from chlorination of drinking water by the utility. With that information, you can then buy the right solution at your home. Done. More or less. You can check on it once every couple of years, make sure it's working, maintain the thing. And you'd think the whole country would have done this by now on some level. But they haven't. Most homes still don't have professional in-home water filtration. You have a water heater, like 99% of homes have water heaters. But understanding your drinking water quality, buying home filtration, adequate home filtration is very late to the game. And a lot of the reason it's so late to the game, in my opinion, is because the testing component, that first step, that diagnostic step, has been unavailable for so long. And we're seeing that change now, and a lot of people are testing their water, and we have been very successful in that market because of that tailwind. The question lingers, what's better? Drinking my tap water? Buying bottled water? Drinking some other beverage? Or buying a filter and drinking my tap water through that filter. And we spend a lot of our time kind of with people asking and answering that question. And we find that they ask the questions and the answers are different all around the country, whether you rent, whether you buy, whether you're rural, whether you're urban, whether you distrust the government or you love the government. There's a whole there's spectrums upon spectrums, and with water, it's everyone, right? Like the TAM, the total addressable market, is everyone, and that's kind of novel as well.
So I want to summarize that for a second for the audience. I definitely want to jump into water filters, which is where my summary is going to end at. But if I live in a home, whether it be in rural America or in New York City or Los Angeles, San Francisco, your recommendation generally is that you should test your water at kind of phase 1, right? If you get that diagnostics element, you can then understand exactly what parameters in your water need to be quote unquote fixed. And with that data, would you recommend combining it with the CCR government, like utility report, or is that test enough for you to then kind of get to that next phase of, well, now let me figure out what filter I need?
The test is generally, it depends what test you order. We and let's just take ourselves out of the equation. There's not just one water test. There's like heavy metals, there's volatile organics, and there are esoteric compounds like PFAS and microplastics. So depending on, let's assume you buy the right water test, meaning to say one that's representative of the kind of issues you're facing. Then you should have everything you need to choose the right filter. A lot of people either won't have the budget or won't have the interest to purchase the right kind of testing for their area, for their conditions. And so then you can kind of combine it with information in a CCR, a customer confidence report, and make the decision. If you're served by a public utility or a private utility, you can pretty much assume there's some trihalomethanes in your water. Is it a concerning amount? Is the dose a poison? Probably not. The only way to really find out if your levels are too high in your own opinion is to test it. So can you always fill in the blanks with like publicly available data? Yes, but it might be very tricky, and it might not actually be representative of your home.
Got it. And so how do I know what is representative of my home? Like if I'm a person listening to this podcast right now, you mentioned there's a sweep of parameters, right? There's the heavy metals, there's the VOCs, there's your general parameters, there's the PFAS, the microplastics. There's like let's just say there's 100 things. If the problems in my home are things number 20 to 28, and I'm testing for things number 60 to 70, I'm testing the wrong end of the spectrum of the total number of problems that there are, right? Or total number of parameters that I could test. And so how do I get to that initial starting point of I need to test for things number 20 to 28?
So there's a couple ways to do it. Easiest, boring way is to just talk to our team. Like that is specifically what we do. So we can tell people what are the conditions in their area, and they can choose the tests accordingly. We also have publicly available data that summarizes the state and federal data on water quality available. So you can look at it there. It's citywater.mytapscore.com. So you're not left wondering what are the conditions of my general area. You can just see them and say, okay, look, it looks like 10% of the homes in my area have some kind of lead detection. And determine for yourself if you think you should do a lead test. Or, hey, 2% of the homes in my area have elevated 1,4-dioxane. That's weird. But I'm not worried about 1,4-dioxane. I'm not going to spend additional money on 1,4-dioxane testing. So you can look at the publicly available data, I think, to judge a little bit of where you want to spend your money on testing. You can also just talk to our team. Certain things are always inherent risks. I say always, but normally inherent risk. And those are things related to premise plumbing. Even if you have plastic pipes, there are concerns. I mean, we have a lot of people with PEX plumbing who have concerns about their drinking water taste and smells even because of the PEX. Just as we have issues and concerns around people with old copper and the concerns around lead plumbing. So that's something the utility doesn't test for. Unless they've come in your house, knocked on your door, and collected from your sink, there's just no way they're going to have that information for you. They are doing a lot of testing. And indeed, a lot of hard work to make sure the water quality that's getting into the distribution system meets standards. First and foremost, almost every water utility is in compliance with the key standards. There are things downstream that are maybe more nuanced that the water system itself cannot fully represent on its consumer confidence report, like the lead levels, for example. If there's lead in your home, the water utility can't do anything about that, really.
Sure.
Of course, there are now rules where there are changes to the LCR, the lead and copper rule, that are changing the way utilities not only discover these lead issues, but fix them. So help is on the way. Then there's concerns with, hey, water utility delivers drinking water properly to the distribution system. Does it change on the way from the distribution system to my house? It certainly does. There's distribution systems out there where the water can take several days to get to your house. And it transforms its chemistry. It's a natural system, that water, and its interaction with the plumbing and the pipes. So chlorine in particular has been known to transform and create disinfection byproducts. Now, things like PFAS, which are very topical right now, are not likely to enter your drinking water system. In fact, it's almost impossible for PFAS to enter your drinking water system if they are tested at the utility and demonstrated at the utility to be undetected. It is extremely unlikely, I can't think of a way how, that PFAS are thus ending up in your tap, because it's a closed system. At least it should be. It usually is. And, this is, I'm presenting like 3 or 4 examples here, but it's really confusing stuff if you have no background in any of this. And so what we've done principally is build a place for people to ask these questions, get testing done, explore their options where there wasn't one before. So all the way up until tap score, it was extremely difficult to get professional water testing at home, or even to talk to a professional about your water that feels unbiased, that feels like they're not your utility or they're not the EPA. And then the final, I think, source of concern for people are the things that are not regulated. So just like PFAS was not regulated until recently, there are other things that are potentially underregulated. The big ones are like pharmaceutical concerns and microplastics, which frankly, I'm not particularly concerned about in our tap water. But there are people out there who either have reason to be very concerned about these things or at least suspicious. And, they need to have recourse. They need to have some way of figuring out if this is a concern for them. And so providing consumer testing is really the only way to get to that answer. Because most utilities are not going to test for things, let alone report the information about them, if they're not being regulated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally makes sense. And so picking off kind of where I left off, for all those that are listening, you should probably just go to citywater.mytopscore.com, right? Go ahead and generally see in your particular area if there is a prevalence of a problem that you see, whether that be with lead or whatever those problems could be. If you start over there, then you guys have basically a series of water testing kits that would be most prevalent for somebody to basically pick up. That comes back, and then there's obviously a slew of filters or sort of fixes that you can then do to buy to basically correct your water. Do you guys see a Pareto? What's like the 80-20 of generally people should buy, I guess, a lot. Like, should I go buy a Brita filter, right? Or should I buy a Zero filter? Like, obviously we need to do the testing, the diagnostics, but out there, once they've got that done, are you seeing particular fixes in water chemistry around filters or products that people are buying? And maybe even geographically, like in New York, we're noticing that everybody should buy an X filter, or versus in Texas, they should buy a Y filter or an RO system.
I think to your point, depending on what's in your water and depending on what you're concerned about, right? Like if you're a mother or a father with a newborn, there's reason to be more anxious. And so the level of filtration will be more sophisticated. if it's you and your partner and you're both in your 30s or 40s and there's nobody else, and you're not immunocompromised in any particular way and you're not sick in any particular way, you probably don't need anything at all. And if you do get something, you're purchasing a basic granular activated carbon filter or a over-the-counter kind of RO system. If you have a house in an area where there's water hardness issues, okay, well, a water softener is typical. So I'd say 3 technologies. There's a decision between the whole home and the point of use. So of those 3 technologies, let's consider those the most prevalent. The water softening, ion exchange technology, reverse osmosis solution, which is maybe the kind of nuclear option in a way. And then the granular activated carbon, which is the most familiar. You mentioned Brita and Zero Water, and there's plenty of other brands out there. I'll take this opportunity to say we do not sell any filtration or treatment. We're on the side of the person purchasing the unbiased diagnostic test so that you can go find the right filter you want. And we're not involved in that equation at all beyond giving you advice. So we'll tell you what technologies will work, but we're not going to sell you a filter. We're not going to even give you an affiliate link to a filter. But we will help you pick it out. So with that said, you got these 3 maybe biggest technologies: granular activated carbon, softening / ion exchange, and reverse osmosis. The next decision is, do I treat all the water in my home, have a point of entry solution, or do I just go for 1 sink or 2 sinks? Obviously, a budget plays a big role here as well. Do you own the home or rent the home? Plays another factor. The actual contaminants you're concerned about plays another factor. Like if you're concerned about lead, and you don't know if that lead is in your home or at the street level, there's no sense in treating your water as it as it flows into your home if the lead is in your plumbing. So knowing some of this information is important before you buy a filter. That's a long way of saying no. There's no silver bullet yet. It really, everyone is a special snowflake, and so is the water. And so the filter you choose may likely be one of those 3 technologies, but there's another 20. Distillation systems, aeration systems. You've got cation and anion exchange systems. The list goes on, and I'm not going to bore people or you with the list, but you're right. There is a way to simplify it all with saying hey, these core technologies probably can be adapted to 90 to 95% of people's homes needs.
Cool. That makes a ton of sense. And I think that'll be super useful for the audience out there. We'll throw those on the show notes. I would love to kind of get into a little bit of the background of why did Johnny build this? What's the founding story behind creating TapScore and Simple Lab? Did you have a water problem? Did you just kind of realize that there was a big disconnect between people understanding what's in their tap water? Was it Flint, Michigan? What's that starting story look like?
Yeah, there was obviously Flint, Michigan was a huge tragedy that provoked the idea on some level, but it wasn't tit for tat. After graduate school here at Berkeley, I had gotten involved in a kind of grant to use technology called electrochemical arsenic remediation, ECAR, in the California Central Coast to remediate arsenic from wells. And the idea was that this technology would be viable in public water systems and in private water systems across the country, because arsenic is a major issue in the United States. It affects tens of millions of connections. After about a year or so of testing that technology, we found that the most attractive thing about what we were doing wasn't our arsenic remediation solution. The business model just wasn't really making sense. It was kind of the case that, you think of it this way: the solution that we were delivering was called ECAR, was maybe 30 or 40% cheaper than what was out there already. But in water filtration and treatment, that's not enough. Because all the other costs of building and selling and marketing and maintaining technology in a water industry are huge. So just because the technology portion is a little bit cheaper, you're still going to get hit by all these other costs. And we have to, get a new technology certified in the state of California and then in every other state. So seeing that, we realized we had to change the business model. And it was actually a conversation I'd had with my father at one point where I said, like, hey, it's not really working. I don't think. I don't see how this really is ready to become a business. At least I don't know how to run this business without needing tons of money and runway. So he asked me then, it was over dinner in Berkeley, and he's like, well, what is working? And I said, well, honestly, one thing all of our customers really appreciate is talking about their water quality. And at that point in time, we've been doing these water tests for free and more or less giving them out in order to help people understand that they had an arsenic issue and to understand the nature of their arsenic issue. Was there arsenic and high pH? Was there arsenic and uranium? Was there arsenic and a lot of hardness? What were the conditions of these pilot locations? And the conversation about those test results was always a fascinating discussion where people were showing real interest. And so we kind of just flipped the business in a way and said, hey, instead of selling arsenic remediation technology and building a new electrochemical product for the United States, let's just sell the testing. And lo and behold, we hustled, we got lucky, and it just started to work that way. In the very beginning, we had a Shopify store, a very meager AdWords budget, and we started building a customer-friendly way of purchasing and understanding water quality lab results. And then it took off.
Really cool. And what was the time between doing the arsenic testing, and was the arsenic testing for the consumer market in the Central Valley, or were those for farmers or kind of B2B?
It was a little more B2B, but when you're dealing with small communities and a more agricultural and rural setting, the lines get blurred easily, right? Like everyone in town is interested when there's 50 people in town.
Sure.
And so it was consumer enough, like the interest felt more like people are interested rather than businesses are interested. They may very well have actually been businesses, but it was more about people having these questions. And so we built a product that was more ready to serve people's questions. The time we probably spent maybe a maximum of 2 years trying to understand this market for arsenic volt or ECAR. And at the end of those, I'd say about 2 years, we started to realize it wasn't feasible, at least not as a private company, from my point of view. And then it took about another 3 to 6. I didn't have a lot of money, so like building the next version of the business had to be done quickly and cheaply, and it had to work on the first go. And that's kind of why it felt like it was lucky. We made this huge transition from a kind of hardware technology company to effectively a new business model altogether, to a company that's now I consider as a logistics company. Yeah.
And what was, if you were, a lot of our audience are kind of people thinking about getting into the water entrepreneurship game or just entrepreneurs in general. Do you have a lesson that, over the course of making this pivot, moving from the arsenic piece to kind of doing water testing in-home B2C, do you kind of have like a life learning or like a business learning lesson that, people probably wouldn't know if they didn't talk to you?
There's so many lessons. I mean, every day is full of lessons, right? I don't mean to get poetic here, but there's so many lessons, right? And I think a lot of them, I don't think I have any that are necessarily new to the what's it called? The atlas of of human mistakes and learning. Thinking right now, I will say one thing that's always been very interesting, and I haven't made up my mind on yet, is the working with friends one. It's kind of it's a controversial one. It can go both ways. There are people who I work with today that I was friends with well before TapScore. And then there's people I met through hiring and purely a relationship forged in business. And I've had the friends we've had to let go, and that sucks. And I've had the friends who have done marvelously, and it worked out really well within TapScore, and that's awesome. I even work with my dad, right? Like, my father is the CFO of the company, so sometimes that's awesome, sometimes that's painful.
Yeah.
I'll say the jury is out, in my opinion, on that one. So as a lesson, and it's not exactly a life lesson because I haven't gotten the end of it yet. But I will say I wouldn't judge the book from its cover. And so if you're somebody starting a business and you're like not sure if you should do it with your girlfriend or boyfriend or partner or with a family member, I'd say there's no hard and fast rules here. You can totally do it with your best friends, and you can totally do it with strangers and with family and without family. You just have to know what you're buying into when you do that. So if you're going to have tough conversations with people who are emotionally important to you already, like, just be ready for that.
Yeah. Real sound advice. I've heard that a few times actually, but yeah, that's really, really good advice.
I think it's real. I mean, it's realistic, right? Like if you're starting it's not everyone, especially not in 2024, is going to have a ton of money in their war chest on day one, right? So the easiest people to like kick an idea around with are the people you're already kind of close with or friends with. Family members give you good advice, maybe give you a little bit of money, and so they start working with you, for you. So I think today, 2024, it might be in next couple of years, because obviously the conversation in Silicon Valley is, well, VC is slower than it used to be. And I don't know if it is or isn't, to be honest. Something has changed for sure since 2021.
Yeah.
You're going to see more and more people getting creative with who they're working with in those early days.
For sure. Yeah. I think that makes a ton of sense. Let's walk through the kind of customer experience on TapScore. Like, what I think it's really interesting also for the audience, because we get this question asked so much. What does that look like? Like, do I just go to tapscore.com and I hit, I talk to one of your customer service reps and then I order one of these things? Does something get shipped to my house and I put it underneath my tap? How does it work?
So for the standard journey, somebody arrives at the website, mytapscore.com, chooses a water source, private well, rainwater, water utility. Obviously, that's the most popular one. Spring water. You then see the most common, what we call core test kits for that water source. And you're invited to then customize it a little bit based upon the age of your home, any particular concerns you have. Of course, budget is a consideration. So we put everything in such a fashion where you can see the pricing very easily. And then sooner or later, you've either made up your mind and made a decision, you checked out like you buy anything else on the internet through a cart, or you reach out to the customer service team and you say, hey, I'm almost done, but I got some questions. And we have an outstanding support team. I mean, it's a mixture of scientists and just outstanding communicators and very helpful people. And we've really tried to foster that combination. And which is weird, right? Because right now the discussion around AI and customer service is raging. And there seems to be like everywhere you throw a rock, you hit an AI customer service product or a company, and we've dabbled in them, but man, there's nothing better than a real person still. So maybe it's more expensive, but in my experience, it makes your customers happier. That's probably most important. it keeps your team more engaged on the actual business. Like if an AI is like listening to your customers' problems and trying to answer them, I feel like you're missing out on something. No. I also think it should be your problem. And my personal opinion is if you got problems and the customers are pointing them out, like, all right, man, just that's your responsibility in a sense. Like, be there to at least talk to the person. It's just, how annoying is it when you like call up the airline or the internet company and you're talking to a robot for 15 minutes until you finally push the right button or express enough rage that they give you a human being.
You're like rage clicking 0 to get to an operator as quick as you can. Yeah.
Dude, I could get so upset sometimes with these robot situations. It's like, it's just, I want to do that to my own customers.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, maybe it's a little more expensive to take some graduate engineering students and chemistry students and tell them that they have to do some customer support, which probably they weren't thinking they were going to do. But we bring almost everyone on our team into customer support. It is like the unifying medium of our business, because we got people who come in with very sophisticated questions and also very unsophisticated questions, and you need to have all hands on deck sometimes. So I don't know if that was an answer to a question. How do we get talking about AI and ICE in customer support?
You had mentioned, so you then get to the end, you can talk to a customer support rep if you have any questions.
Yeah,
and then once you hit the checkout button, do you get something mailed to you? Do you mail, do you get just an empty bottle and you send it back in? Like, how does the process work? And then is there an app? Do you get to see your readings? Like, what does that look like?
So when you place your order, we in our warehouse prepare the kit accordingly based on what you ordered for testing. And there's a lot of different sampling materials out there. Bottles, glasses, transparent, opaque, brown glass, preservatives inside, no preservatives inside, temperature controlled, not temperature controlled. So we manage a massive inventory of professional sampling equipment, bottles, vials, preservatives. And when orders come through, say it again?
I see why you say you're a logistics company, by the way.
Yeah, this is kind of where that begins. So once the order is placed, we've got our own proprietary software that effectively tells us how to package the order. And, there's thousands of different items in our inventory to make sure that this works properly, because different labs use different materials, different states use different materials, different levels of compliance require different materials. So that algorithm to match up customers' orders with the requisite materials and paperwork is sophisticated. And we then ship out materials that include instructions, which again have to correspond to all the bottles. We don't have a simple one-page instruction that works for everything. Every kit needs its own instructions. You receive that in the mail, and you can just honestly follow the playbook at this point. We've dialed it in to be something anyone can do at home. And that means following some instructions, collecting a sample. You've got a couple of choices usually for a given test, how you want to collect the sample, when you want to collect the sample. You then activate the test kit saying, hey, I'm about to send it in. We assign it to a laboratory at that point in time, effectively turning your return shipping label, which we provide you with, active and ready to be used. It gets sent to the closest lab that's adequately certified and up and running and capable of testing what you need tested. Once it arrives at that laboratory, testing begins. Most test kits are done in 3 to 5 business days. You get results back when they're finished. And that report, there's like 3 or 4 reports you get. 1, you get a standard laboratory PDF. Difficult to parse, but technically rigorous and available. 2, you get an HTML report that is much more colorful. And on the other end of the spectrum, it's clickable, it's animated, it has guidance and translation. And then you have your quality control information and additional materials provided by TapScore to kind of help you make sense of this report, this lab report. You can also have a CSV file. So at that point in time, you have everything you need to understand and interpret your results. You can pass those results to a filtration expert. You can come back to TapScore and ask us further questions. Most people look at the report and say, okay, good, we're good. Nothing required. No filtration required, no treatment, nothing sophisticated required. But if you're in that 25 to 35% of people who look at that report and say, I don't like the way that looks, you can reach out and talk to us. You can share the report with a local water filtration company or a national filtration company, but you now have what you need to improve your own drinking water. And that's the critical step that we've, I think, solved and provided. Whereas in the past, you never had that information. And as a result, like water filtration market, in my opinion, has been massively hindered in the last 10, 20 years. The product quality, just like you compare your iPhone to a water filter and they're like two different planets. I mean, obviously, right? But like there has not been the same amount of I'd say like consumer focus and innovation on these products. I think because the consumer hasn't had the right information at their fingertips for the filtration companies to then get obsessed with making them happy.
Yeah, entirely. That is impressive, Johnny. I love the customer experience as well as the kind of logistics underlayer that you built. That's just really impressive that you guys have, over 1,000 SKUs of lab equipment, package those up in a box, test it, but then even on top of that, you guys activate the return label to then send it to the closest lab after to then actually get that test done. Plus the data, right? You can double click all the way into that really complex data stream, or you can kind of see this really colorful, data stream that tells you exactly what it is. That's really, really impressive. Johnny, I have one last question I ask everybody on the podcast. And it is, what is your favorite book, movie, or show that has kind of either given you like an overview effect of your life or changed the way that you look at the world of water?
Oh man, I'm so glad you're asking this question because I do have a favorite book and it is so awesome and people need to know about it.
What is it?
It's called Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality.
Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. Okay.
It's weird. I'm going to just go out and say that it's extremely weird. It's maybe thousands of pages long.
Okay.
It's fan fiction. And it's the story of Harry Potter, loosely, told from the point of view of a rationalist Harry Potter. Very brilliant scientist Harry Potter who had brilliant scientist parents. And he goes to Hogwarts and he's pretty much there to figure out what the heck is magic. How does it work? There must be an explanation. It can't, I refuse to believe there's actual magic. And if there is, it must abide some laws. And I'm going to figure them out.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It's funny. It's a page turner. And to this day, I'm amazed how I actually think this is sacrilege. I think it is better than the canon. I think it is better than the real Harry Potter. I would pay 10 times as much to see the movie. It's brilliant. And it has woken me up, I think, to so many different ideas. I'm not a rationalist, and I know that is a kind of an ideology some people embrace, and I don't embrace necessarily the rationalist ideology. That doesn't mean this is an extraordinarily awesome story, and you can learn a ton from it. So yeah, if you're looking for a weird, eccentric book, I would go on. It's free. And actually there's an audiobook now too. A guy named Jack Faraces does a really wonderful job of reading it out loud. And I would say that is my favorite work of literature.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll definitely throw those on the show notes. Johnny, thank you so much for coming on the episode today.
Hey, my privilege. Thank you, Ravi.